She had to leave her husband at the border because he's between 18 and 60. So he had to go back into his country to fight. She had to take her their 3 kids, to come into this country where she says she knows no one. There are 123 reception centers set up by the Polish government all across the country. There's one nearby here where in just about 2 hours, the Polish government is going to give us a briefing about the humanitarian crisis. But there's a sign that says one of those reception centers is right there. It's for women like her. She knows nobody here. This reception center is going to tell her what she can do and how she can transition into life in Poland, even though she doesn't know anybody and she doesn't know what she's going to do, how long she's going to have to be there. This is the face of this humanitarian crisis that has only just begun. It is only going to get worse from here. But Poland and other border countries say they're ready and they're doing everything they can. Guys?
And those little faces in this crisis, just so heart-wrenching. Our thanks to Phil for that. Now to the support here at home for citizens in Ukraine trying to protect their freedom. Protests held in every major city. And a former reality star shipping $10 million worth of survival kits to Ukrainians fleeing the country. ABC's Kenneth Moulton is here with more. Good morning, Kenneth.
Lindsay, good morning. As Phil just showed us, we've seen those incredible images of Ukrainians in need. People here in the U.S. are not only demanding an end to Russia's aggression, they are donating their time and money as the humanitarian crisis deepens. Overnight, major landmarks in the U.S. and around the world illuminated in Ukraine's blue and yellow. Protests in the streets across the U.S., thousands, including Ukrainian Americans, marching.
Stand with Ukraine! Knock it off! Knock it off!
Some demonstrators sharing horrible stories of loved ones trapped in the violence.
My mom just taped all windows because if they start shooting, and they decide that since they don't have the place to hide, they will stay in a bathroom and just hide in the tube.
Entrepreneur, philanthropist, and former reality star Bethany Frankel using her nonprofit to send aid to families, children in need.
We have 100,000 survival kits that we have shipped. We have $10 million in aid that will reach Poland. And we have a warehouse with $16 million of aid in Miami.
Frankel says her initiative, Be Strong, partnering with Global Empowerment Mission, has seen an influx of donations since Russia's invasion. They're committing to sending things like hygiene kits, blankets, and generators to NATO countries bordering Ukraine. But they also want to get people out of the region if needed.
Helping people with their travel logistics and get them to loved ones or help them get somewhere that's safe. Then it's the next layers of this, helping people rebuild.
Other humanitarian organizations, including the Red Cross and the UN, calling for the protection of critical infrastructure like hospitals from attacks as they now rush to help the people of Ukraine. Those aid organizations are still having a tough time figuring out the full damage to water and power systems from Russia's attack. We can also report that the UN is urging Ukraine's neighboring countries to keep their borders open to provide safety and protection to those fleeing. Gio.
Oh, Kenneth, so many people looking for ways to help the people of Ukraine. Kenneth, thank you for bringing us that.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time. In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
I risked my life. I put my family in danger. If I was caught, they would have put a bullet in my head. But it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do.
Terror plot foiled in Garden City, Kansas.
That would have been one of the most deadly acts of domestic terrorism ever in the United States.
It would have been Oklahoma City.
He put his family, himself, in jeopardy for us.
24 Hours, Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
squeezing into this bomb shelter.
Run, urgent delivery, run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
National parks are incredibly safe places. A crime will happen.
My wife is cold. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident. There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is too high for Harold, that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
The straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. Nightline, #1 in late night versus the competition. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
This is an ABC News Live special report. The Ukraine-Russia crisis.
Live from ABC News in New York, this is Good Morning America.
Good morning, America. Wit is off this morning. We are happy to be joined by Lindsay Davis and Gio Benitez on this very busy day. We begin with breaking news in Ukraine. The battle over Kyiv is underway this morning. Russian forces launching attacks on Ukraine's capital with intense fighting overnight.
Cities around the world showing their support for Ukraine by lighting up their landmarks with the colors of the Ukrainian flag, from the Eiffel Tower to the Roman Colosseum to the Empire State Building.
Protesters also gathering around the world to call out Russian aggression. In London, thousands gathering at Downing Street, calling President Putin a killer and a terrorist. In Pretoria, South Africa, crowds gathered outside the Russian embassy. And in Moscow, people laid flowers outside Ukraine's embassy, calling on Putin to stop the invasion. ABC senior foreign correspondent Ian Paddle is on the ground in Kyiv with the very latest on the crisis. Ian, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Gio. Another night of bombardment and battles, not just here in the capital, but also across Ukraine. Russian forces now advancing in many parts of the country, but also being slowed by really strong Ukrainian defenses. This morning, Russian troops moving deeper into the Ukrainian capital, the city facing a potential siege. Despite claims civilians aren't being targeted, in this social media post, you can see an apartment block in the city struck this morning. It's unclear by whom. Incredibly, no one was killed. Tatiana and her family were inside the building. She says, "My kid's room is now just a hole. If she'd been in there, she wouldn't have survived." Overnight, battles raging in parts of the city, but Ukrainian troops mounting a solid defense so far. Ukrainian President Zelensky this morning outside in central Kyiv, vowing, "We will defend our country because our arms are our truth. Our truth is that it's our land, and we will defend all of this." A senior Pentagon official telling ABC News the first 2 days have not gone as well as the Russians expected, but it's believed they are resupplied and poised to execute a coordinated assault on Kyiv at any time. Zelensky warning last night the coming hours would be tough, saying we cannot lose Kyiv. The military relaxing restrictions on who can join the army. Defense forces seen patrolling in civilian clothes, wearing yellow armbands instead of uniforms. 18,000 weapons have been handed out to volunteers to help in the fight. Alexei Goncharenko is a prominent lawmaker here, but today he's one more armed citizen.
I don't want to fight. I'm not soldier. I'm not professional military man. But I am not ready to capitulate. That's the difference.
Videos posted online show an armoured vehicle crushing a car on the edge of the capital. Miraculously, the stunned driver escaping alive. Northwest of Kyiv, this bridge reportedly destroyed to slow Russia's advance from the north. Russian soldiers now advancing on the roads. New satellite images showing Russian military deployments in southern Belarus, including ground transport helicopters just 20 miles from the border with Ukraine. And near the Black Sea coast, as thousands of troops arrived in a so-called amphibious assault, naval infantry coming ashore in the town of Melitopol. Gunshots ringing out on this train platform as hundreds attempt to board, desperate to escape Kyiv. And in Dnipro in the east, Lika Kuznetsova and her family are a day's drive from the nearest border. Her husband expects to be drafted, so she could be forced to leave him behind when the time comes.
Today was the first time that my husband and I actually looked at the map, and we were trying to figure out the best way for me and my child to travel if I had to flee.
Well, senior U.S. official warning that the Russians could attempt a mass move into Kyiv today, saying it will be brutal. But for now, Ukrainian defense is holding up, but under incredible pressure. Guys, I have to say the atmosphere in the city is electric. I mean, it's Saturday afternoon, and you can almost hear a pin drop. In fact, the only sound breaking the silence is the sound of war. And this city, its residents, are now bracing for an even tougher onslaught ahead. Tough days definitely lie ahead. Lindsay.
We can certainly imagine. Ian, thank you so much. And now let's bring in ABC News contributor Colonel Steve Ganyard, former Defense and State Department official. He joins us now from Washington. Good morning, Steve. Thanks so much for joining us. So at this moment, Russian forces are surrounding Kyiv. What do you think comes next?
I think they're going to continue to try to do that, Lindsay. I think what's most surprising is that they have not surrounded Kyiv yet. I will tell you that as we looked at the troop dispositions and where the Russians are making advances, they're quite modest, even around the places where most of their troops were out here in eastern Afghanistan or eastern Ukraine. But if you look at what's going on in Kyiv, it's very strange. They're committing troops piecemeal. It's hard to understand. They're sending them down roads. They're not going off-road. They're being picked off by the Ukrainian military. So much of the Russian assault around Kyiv has stalled, which is very strange. You thought that this was sort of a David and Goliath. So far it looks like David's doing pretty well.
And so this morning Ukrainians are celebrating, essentially having held out overnight. But how long does Steve need to hold Putin off in order to make a difference in this fight in the long term?
Yeah, it's still Goliath out there, and the Russians still have a lot more resources. They will continue to resupply. The Russians have not fought a major war in a long time, so we're seeing things that it's sort of bizarre that go back to like 1970s tactics. You would have thought they would have worked against NATO. So the Russians will adapt. They will resupply. They will continue to push in. But the thing that concerns me, Lindsay, is that the Ukrainians have done so well in this early part of the battle that Putin may turn up the temperature. So the Russian military has been very clear. We're not hitting anything but military targets. We're not hitting any civilians. But Putin's getting bogged down, and time is the problem for Putin. All of the sanctions begin to work. The international pressure begins to work on him, and so he's going to get impatient with his military, and I hope it doesn't end up increasing the number of civilian casualties.
All right, Steve Ganyard, we thank you so much for your time and insight as always. Eva?
Well, with missiles flying and Russian troops fighting their way into the country, hundreds of thousands of desperate Ukrainians are fleeing their homes, creating a potential humanitarian crisis. ABC's Aaron Katursky is on the ground in Lviv with the latest on those who are trying to leave the country. Good morning to you, Aaron.
Eva, good morning. The fighting is tearing families apart as so many here make the difficult choice to leave.
This morning, hundreds of thousands of people are rushing to flee Ukraine, pouring into train stations, pushing against checkpoints, and waiting hours. ABC's Matt Gutman spoke to some families who made the long journey to Poland.
How long have you been driving? It was 24 hours just in this line here.
Yeah.
An American Juan Tech and his Ukrainian wife Alonia traveling roughly 30 hours from Kyiv to the Polish border.
And I want to come back, but I don't know if we're going to come back.
With so many struggling to escape, humanitarian organizations like Project Dynamo are trying to help.
They start a war, we start a rescue. Some of our people were afraid to travel. They didn't want to go on the street. They didn't know what was happening. Some of them didn't think that we'd get a bus. They're shelling, therefore buses won't drive.
Many of the displaced are seeking shelter in train stations like this one in Poland, bringing only needed documents and the luggage they can carry. And these images show the traffic stretching roughly 4 miles near the Romanian border. At the border with Slovakia, fathers saying their goodbyes to wives and families. For those left behind, there are growing fears of the Russian advance. Here in Lviv, we saw desperate attempts to hold back the invading army.
The men in this country cannot leave. They've been conscripted into the fight, and without advanced weapons, they're doing what they can to protect their neighborhoods. They're filling sandbags, they've got tires, this makeshift checkpoint. They're also filling bottles with gasoline for Molotov cocktails.
As neighborhoods empty out, families torn apart make whatever plans they can to try to survive. Many mothers have been left alone to care for their children as they wait in the cold for border guards to let them through.
It's going to be very scary for a mom. You seem very composed, very okay.
No, for the kids.
You're not feeling it.
It's for kids.
It's for the kids.
The Russians are not officially targeting civilians, but civilians have been killed. So for many, escape is the obvious choice. But for others, it's much more difficult. As one young woman put it to me, Gio, how do you leave where your heart is? Gio?
Far too many people asking that question now. Aaron Katersky in Lviv. Aaron, thank you. We're going to turn now to the White House, which, along with allies, is stepping up sanctions against Vladimir Putin. According to a new ABC News Washington Post poll, 67% of Americans back the U.S. and its European allies imposing economic sanctions on Russia. ABC's Mary Alice Parks has more.
The White House this morning stepping up support of Ukraine, authorizing an additional $350 million to provide immediate military assistance as the security situation deteriorates, bringing the total of U.S. military aid to Ukraine to over $1 billion this year. This just after the U.S. slapped sanctions directly on Russian President Vladimir Putin, his foreign minister Sergei Lavrov, and 2 other senior Russian officials. The White House has long said sanctioning Putin was on the table, now making good on that threat along with the United Kingdom and European Union.
The president's strong view and strong principle from the beginning of this conflict, and even before, I should say, has been to take actions and steps in alignment with our European partners, and this is certainly evidence of that.
Experts say it's largely symbolic, with Putin's assets in the U.S. hard to identify. But the move puts Putin in the company of some of the most notorious dictators on the planet. And a White House official says Putin's travel to the U.S. will be restricted. Russia vetoing a resolution before the UN Security Council condemning their invasion. China abstaining.
You cannot veto the truth. You cannot veto our principles. You cannot veto the Ukrainian people.
International diplomacy so far unable to stop the war on the ground. The NATO alliance activating its rapid response force to defend the alliance for the first time. President Biden insisting American troops will not be sent into Ukraine, but that the U.S. and allies stand ready if Putin brings the fight to NATO territory. And overnight, we learned the White House is also requesting more than $6 billion from Congress to help with this crisis, funding for cyber defense and humanitarian aid. And President Biden is in Wilmington this weekend for a memorial service for a family member, but the White House says he'll continue to meet with his national security team. Lindsay?
Mary Alice, thank you. The largest microchip maker in the U.S. tells ABC News it has been hit with a cyber incident. While this incident has not been attributed to anyone just yet, the federal government is warning all American companies to shore up their systems as the Russia-Ukraine conflict continues. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas has an exclusive look inside the NSA exercises to prepare for a potential cyber attack.
As the Ukrainian crisis unfolds, President Biden made clear the potential of cyber attacks from Russia is very much on his mind. But could the Russian government truly impact the lives of everyday Americans? The cold, hard truth is yes.
Welcome to Dreamport. This is one of 2 labs.
In response to the growing cyber threat, the U.S. Cyber Command has developed the Dreamport facility, along with private sector partners and academia, to foster innovation in hacking defense and offense.
All the devices that power this model city are real, actual devices that you would find out in the real world.
It built this miniature city to practice real-world attacks.
This young hacker is about to take out power to an entire city.
Dreamport hackers turned off the city's lights, caused a water park to flood, disrupted traffic lights, and brought the city's port to a halt.
So the idea here is to model the behavior of disruptive cyber attacks.
The Kremlin has an army of hackers at its disposal.
Russia has been one of the most aggressive countries in employing disruptive attacks.
But the U.S. has far-reaching capabilities of its own.
We would respond very forcefully, so whether in the cyber world or the virtual world. So this is something that President Putin is going to have to think through.
U.S. officials are taking no chances. In recent weeks, Homeland Security officials have urged organizations and businesses of all sizes to update and fortify the security of their computer networks, to control access to their networks, and to have a worst-case scenario plan in place to include backup systems if hacked. Guys?
Pierre Thomas for us there in Washington. And Facebook taking action overnight after Russia announced it is limiting the social media platform. Deirdre Bolton is here with that part of our coverage. Good morning to you, Deirdre.
Good morning. And you're right. Overnight, Facebook releasing this statement saying it is now prohibiting Russian state media from running ads or monetizing content on the platform anywhere in the world. It is also going to continue to apply labels to content. So those changes rolling out over the weekend. The move made after Russian authorities demanded that Facebook stop independently fact-checking and labeling content posted by 4 of the country's state-owned media organizations. Meta, that's Facebook's parent company, refused. So Russia says it's now enacting a partial restriction on the platform platform. No one exactly knows what that means. Meta also launching a new feature in Ukraine that allows users to lock their profiles, significantly limiting what information is publicly visible. That is an extra layer of security. Since Russia launched its attack on Ukraine on Thursday, Russians are posting expressions of shame and anger on social media. And of course, human rights activists in Russia voicing concern that the Kremlin would crack down on freedoms in the wake of the invasion. So it just shows us how these situations with fluidity and of course the social media overlay so important for people's safety.
Yeah, absolutely. All right,
Yeah.
Deirdre, thank you so much for that.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
Run, urgent delivery, run. Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events. This is the moment. Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
One fascination with criminal trials, figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion. The ending's really tough.
You don't know when the truth is going to be difficult to find, unless you try to find it.
Is that a gun?
That's not a gun.
What is it? I won't ask you again then. Are you a Nazi?
The deeper you go into black markets,
People jail like this.
the darker it gets.
Why hasn't anyone come out and spoken?
It's about the money, that's all I'm doing.
Trafficked. New episodes Wednesdays at 9 on National Geographic.
Take America's #1 news with you, anywhere you go, anytime, free. Download the ABC News app now. Breaking news, exclusives, 24/7. There for you with one touch. The ABC News app. Download it now.
This is an ABC News Live special report. The Ukraine-Russia crisis.
And welcome back to GMA. And a social media video showing the moment a residential building was hit by a missile in Kyiv in a night of explosions. Russian forces pressing towards Ukraine's capital with fighting reported on the edge of the city. And so many people waking up to that and just in fear because of it.
And you can just imagine the terror that they are feeling right now. ABC Phil's Lipoff is at the border in Poland where thousands of people are fleeing to escape the violence.
Hi guys, we are at one of the busiest border crossings between Poland and Ukraine. Ukraine is just beyond those gates and we are seeing busloads of Ukrainians come in. We're told by the Polish government that 100,000 Ukrainians have already come across the border, between 40 and 50 yesterday alone. And I want to show you the face of this humanitarian crisis. This woman here in the gray jacket, she's just come from Ukraine. She said it's taken her 2 days to get here. She's with her 3 kids, ages 2, 5, and 4. They're getting some food right now from folks who are trying to help out, but here's the deal. She had to leave her husband at the border because he's between 18 and 60. So he had to go back into his country to fight. She had to take her 3 kids, their 3 kids, to come into this country where she says she knows no one. There are 123 reception centers set up by the Polish government all across the country. There's one nearby here where in just about 2 hours the Polish government is going to give us a briefing about the humanitarian crisis. But there's a sign that says one of those reception centers is right there. It's for women like her. She knows nobody here. This reception center is going to tell her what she can do, and